Growing up in Colorado, Shawnee Mulligan has always loved the thrill of the outdoors.
As a kid, every Friday night, we'd jump into the car and we'd drive 3.5 hours to ski race every single weekend in the winter. That's what we did.
Shawnee was the fastest 10-year-old girl skier in the country. Then Shawnee went into running races.
She showed talent from the very beginning. She and her brother ran together.
She was just phenomenal.
When Shawnee graduates from college in 2005, the economy is in a downturn. Finding her professional footing is difficult, so she takes a job at a bike shop in Boulder.
Until the job market picks back up. And I was like, okay, like this is, what I'm gonna do. I was really into cycling then. Part of what I liked about riding my bike was I was good at it. Like I stood out. It was something I did well.
Shawnee can put many men in the dust when it comes to running, cycling, skiing.
Even her own husband can't keep up with Shawnee when she gets married at the age of 26.
He was a really nice guy, well-educated, but they didn't have anything in common.
They divorce after 3 years of marriage, and a few years later, Shawnee joins a dating site, hoping to find someone more compatible.
I just wanted someone nice and who had the same passion for riding bikes that I did. I believe Ron reached out to me first and sent me a message and that my biking photos were awesome. His profile picture wasn't great. It was just kind of this weird photo of him. Nothing like fun riding bikes or anything like that. He had a good 15 years on me. At the time, I was signed up for this big race called the Leadville 100, and he had done it before. It's one of the biggest mountain bike races in the country. It was definitely something we bonded over. So the first day was a bike ride, and we were gonna do this kind of afternoon night ride into the canyons. Part of me was like, okay, let's see if this guy can really ride a bike. Is he gonna be who he says he is? On the way down, I dropped my chain. He totally took advantage of that. And he's like, past me, laughing at me. It was definitely like a little bit competitive in that, he's gonna take advantage of that tactical error and beat me to the bottom. And it was just fun, and he was kind of funny. He's like, I've always wanted to kiss a girl on a mountain bike trail. He was very into it and excited about it. The day he left, after the third day, I remember he left one of his mountain bikes with me to try out because it was like a full carbon, really nice mountain bike. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
For once, it was someone that could keep up with her. He seemed like a really charming, genuine guy, successful in business, and just really different from any guy that Shawnee had dated before.
Shawnee told us that Ron was the IT director for the town of Vail in Eagle County, which is a very highly respected, responsible position. And they really had fun mountain biking together. So we thought, well, this seems like somebody it's a better fit for her.
We dated long distance, and after about 3 months, he kind of asked me, he's like, why don't you move up to Vail? And I was like, are you kidding?
For an athlete like Shawnee, it's a dream opportunity. Vail is a luxury mountain town, ski resort, an elite place to live and work.
It's fantastic scenery. There's a lot of wealth that pours through Vail. A lot of very wealthy people have vacation homes there or come during the winter to ski.
I was excited to move to Vail. Very few people who work in Vail actually can afford to live in Vail. I was intimidated by how established he was and the job he had. I definitely was kind of conscious of it, self-conscious of my status versus his status. I kept being afraid that Ron's gonna change his mind and he's gonna be like, no, never mind. Ron let me know, I guess, that, he was important, that he was in charge, that, he knew everybody in town. I was this trophy. girlfriend because I was the athlete.
In Vail, with Shawnee being there as a near professional level athlete, it raised her status within the community, and Ron was able to ride on those coattails, and he loved that.
Ron showered her with telling her how great she was, how beautiful she was. And for the first 6 months, all she got from him was positives, good feelings, fun.
I absolutely loved him, and he was my biggest emotional support. He was the person who I went to about everything. He was the person I talked to, and he just loved riding bikes and being outside.
After Shawnee moved in with Ron, I didn't get to see her nearly as often. My contact with her decreased significantly.
And at that point in time, Ron also started to isolate her.
I think the first flag was Ron didn't want me to work. And he's like, no, I don't want you working full time. I want to ride with you. There's no reason for you to be working full time. And so I did end up quitting and just kind of doing the race, and he completely financially supported me. Ron always had a lot of money. Bikes, skis, gear. I never heard the words, "No, I can't afford that," come out of his mouth. It was always a question in the back of my head. When I asked Ron about money, he always gave me, "I'm a consultant, I get it from consulting." That was always his go-to.
Shawnee dedicates herself to training and she gets stronger and stronger. But a year into their relationship, Ron starts falling behind.
In 2013, Ron started losing energy. He didn't have the energy to go ride. I remember one day he was literally laying down in his office, sleeping. There was kind of a correlation between low testosterone and men who rode bikes. He went to a doctor, and the doctor basically was like, "You have very low testosterone. You need to be put on testosterone supplement to get you back to a normal level."
It works. Ron feels a boost in his energy almost immediately. But what was meant to be temporary becomes a habit. And steroid use leads to alarming changes in Ron's behavior.
Ron started having these strange, violent outbursts and losing his patience a lot, throw objects, lash out. And every time after Ron would have an outburst, he would be very apologetic and trying to shower her with love and affection, get her new bikes and things like that.
The testosterone also increases Ron's sexual appetite, revealing something surprising.
Ron made it known to me that, he'd had threesomes and that he was interested in that, and this whole idea of swingers. It's what? I couldn't believe it. And I made it clear. I was like, if you want that, you're gonna have to find someone else. And what he said to me is I get I can't have it all, and if I can't have that part of it, that's okay. And I believed him. I thought, okay, end of discussion. No big deal.
My reservations about Ron changed 180 degrees when they went to this 12-hour mountain bike race outside of Phoenix. And they were in the two-person male-female category. And there was a lap around this course that they would race for 12 hours, basically. And he started out, he rode the first 2 laps. And then Shawnee took over.
They were the fastest group of men, women out there. And then Shawnee went down, and her knee was just opened up and blood just flowing everywhere. When Ron came in, he was really upset. And I said, "You're gonna take her to the emergency room?" And he said, "No, I'm gonna try to win this race."
I knew my parents weren't happy that he didn't do anything to see if I was okay. I knew they weren't happy that he just kept riding, and he didn't care that I was hurt. And I knew he was pissed because I crashed and that I ruined his race. I think I just had this overwhelming sense of, how do I make everybody happy in this situation? I was absolutely in love with him, and I was terrified of him ending it because I did something wrong.
Her desire to please Ron puts Shawnee in a vulnerable position, which he uses to his advantage.
He propositioned the threesome swinger lifestyle again with me. But this was the first time I think that he started putting more pressure onto making it a reality. There's this website that we can put our profile up. It's like a dating site for swingers. I was kind of like, I don't think so. And he said that this is so important to me and this is what I need. And I guess I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. This is really important to him. And he told me, like, you have to, like, take a picture with, like, this date on it to prove that you're real. And I think it was just kind of that athletic mountain couple looking for someone. Ron wanted another male. He wasn't interested in another female. He was so excited. And I guess that's part of why I kept going along with it, because it was like, he was so happy and it was like back in love with me, and, you know, like, I was like the best thing in the world. I felt like I couldn't get out of it. I didn't know how to stop it. So we got a response to the ad pretty quick, and he was also a bike rider. I guess that helped a little bit when, how I talked myself into it. I kept thinking, well, you know, he would probably be someone who I would date if I wasn't involved with Ron. I remember on our way to meet him, I was just sick to my stomach, and I just did not want to go, and I just did not want to be part of this. And there was so much dread.
Soon Ron will take Shawnee past the point of no return, into a nightmare of his making.
There was a lot that Ron was hiding from everybody.
It seemed like such a small, quiet place, and yet these heinous crimes being committed. It was disgusting.
Trafficking minors for sexual things that I don't even want to think about. It was almost beyond belief.
Against her better judgment, Shawnee Mulligan and her boyfriend Ron are meeting a stranger for a possible sexual encounter.
I was so uncomfortable. Ron told me, like, you don't have to do this. We may just meet him and not like him, but yet he's like, we're gonna take the RV. And then the guy and Ron were kind of like, do you want to get together? Do you want to hook up? Like, what do you want to do? They were figuring out plans, where to go, to have sex. And I just was kind of like, okay, this is happening. Like, there's no way out. It didn't feel like I could say no at that point. Like, they were excited, they were all about this. Something that I struggle with to this day. And I knew that Ron would be very upset and very angry if I said no. We went out onto a back road. The whole time I was just like, I just want this over. Like, that's all I could think about. Just get it over with. Ron was just standing there watching as I was with this other guy, and I was just like, this is surreal. This is just crazy. It kind of became apparent to me that he just wanted to watch. Like, it didn't feel good. And in order, I think, for sex to feel good, you have to want to be there. How do I just, like, engage enough to make this be over? You know, and that's just what that's all I wanted to do. Afterwards, Ron was so happy, and he was kissing me and hugging me and holding my hand and touching me and telling me how much he loved me and how wonderful I was. Like, Ron was so happy about this and so affectionate. And, you know, I was just like, you know, what did I just do? It was probably within 3 weeks of that we got married. We just went to the courthouse, filled out the paperwork, got the papers. Like, there was no ceremony. I'm gonna give you security, you know, health insurance and some financial security. Because at the time I wasn't making much money.
We didn't know how much control he had over her. Financially, he controlled her. You know, you don't have a job, you're dependent on me for money, for insurance, for everything.
He knew he could kick me out at any moment, and what would I have? I wouldn't have a car. I didn't have any money in the bank. Like, he knew that. I also knew, like, if I piss him off, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go? How am I gonna survive?
After the wedding, Ron continues to take advantage of his power position.
It was pretty clear that he wanted it again and to do more. Ron made it seem like, oh, lots of people have threesomes, lots of people swing. This isn't that uncommon. And he kind of like chips me away, being like, you're the vanilla one, you're the boring one. Like, this, lots of people do this, you know, and you kind of start to think, what's wrong with me? The encounters were pretty frequent, I'd say maybe once a month. Ron started taking videos, I would say the 4th or 5th time that we were probably with someone. And he never asked me. It was just like, I looked up and I was like, he's videoing me. I had no voice in this. He just did it, and he had it on his computer, and I never saw it. I never saw any of the video. I don't know what he did with it. So that was hard. It's so difficult to explain the mental abuse that happens. It would have been easier in some ways if he would have held a gun to my head and told me to do it, because then I could at least explain to people exactly why I did something I did not want to do.
If we had had an inkling of the trauma that was to come in the next few years, John and I would have done whatever it took to get her away from Ron.
The testosterone was always a wild card for me. Like, he was without a doubt self-dosing himself. When a doctor prescribes you a medication, they give you a certain amount to use each day. Well, if Ron had a big race coming up, he'd use 3 times as much. And so he found a place, I don't remember which country it came out of, and he just had it sent to the house.
As Ron's testosterone use escalates, he pushes Shawnee into edgier sexual scenarios.
February 2016, Ron was trying to convince me to be with another couple, a husband and a wife. So they were both very into the lifestyle, and it was horrible. The husband was so rough, and it hurt so bad. And I remember just looking at Ron and being like, please make this stop, because it was so painful. Afterwards, talking to Ron on the way home, and I was like, he hurt me. The husband hurt me. And he didn't care. The next day, I just packed stuff in my car and I remember I called my dad. I was like, I'm coming home. My dad's like, what is going on? And I gave the G-rated version of what happened. And then Ron starts texting me and calling me. He was saying, I did this wrong. I'm sorry, I messed up. Like, I won't do this again. I'll get help. I'll stop taking testosterone. He was promising to change. And so I went back. A couple of weeks later, we had agreed that there were going to be no more sexual encounters. I guess I truly believed that would happen. When I moved back, I was hoping it would get better and things would be okay. But part of me knew it wouldn't.
A couple of months later, Ron approaches Shawnee with what seems like an exciting prospect.
He comes up and he said, I want to buy a house. It was a beautiful house, $1 million house on acreage.
But there's a sticking point.
He's like, I need a legal agreement, basically saying, the house is mine, not yours.
Shawnee is to give up any potential financial claim she might have as Ron's wife.
And then he had his attorney do the post-nup, like, the house was his retirement was his, all the savings accounts, the bank accounts, everything was his. And nothing was mine.
This is the last straw. Shawnee decides it's time to become financially independent.
I applied to be a deputy at the jail for the county, knowing that it paid decent and that I could get health insurance. He was pissed, knowing that I was trying to get out financially. So as a jail deputy, I carried a gun. It's part of the job, though. I got a 9mm. So Ron gets a handgun. And, you know, at the time, I think it's odd, but Ron's the type of guy who, like, I get something, he needs to get something. You know, it's kind of how that works with him. A rifle case shows up in the closet. And I'm like, what's that about? He's like, oh, it reminds me of my old military days, my Ranger days. He told everybody he was a Ranger, which is Special Forces. I just remember thinking, that's odd. I found out later that he was never a Ranger.
Now that Shawnee has a job and has her own financial means, Ron has lost his control over her. And this, he can't accept.
Ron kicked me out of the house. He just told me that he couldn't deal with my schedule, that me working nights was too much, and he couldn't handle me in this job. I was able to find us pretty crappy apartment, but I was out. We haven't filed for divorce yet. We're obviously separated. When I applied for the job, the sexual coercion had stopped. And I'm kind of like, okay, can this get better? Can this work?
Shawnee is about to discover why the sexual demands have stopped. Her world is about to be turned upside down, and it all starts while she's at work.
I'm working on the floor of the jail, and I remember that there's a guy, and he gets on the radio, and he's like, hey, Shawnee, the undersheriff wants to talk to you. And I'm kind of like, what is going on? And they tell me your husband's been arrested. You know, I'm shocked. I'm like, for what?
Transporting a minor for sex, prostituting a minor, soliciting a minor for sex.
Sex crimes against children. And I just, shock.
Shawnee Mulligan finds out her husband Ron has been arrested at his Vail office for having sex with a minor.
I just was shaking. Like, I was just so confused. And then the charges just made no sense to me. I've never heard of some of the charges, and I didn't understand what they were. But I knew that it had to do with trafficking of a minor, sex trafficking of a minor. I called my parents, and I was just crying and sobbing and just completely in shock.
A joint FBI Colorado PD task force has uncovered a sex trafficking ring near Vail in Glenwood Springs. They found Ron in a hotel room having sex with an underage girl.
Ron was charged with 4 charges. He was charged with solicitation of a child prostitute, patronizing a child prostitute, pandering of a child prostitute, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Those are serious allegations, and it was shocking for the community and for his friends and colleagues.
I obtained the indictment from the grand jury, and what I read was frankly disgusting. It gave me an icky feeling in the pit of my stomach to think that these young girls from Denver had been trafficked into sex for someone in my neighborhood. It came out later that they were girls. I was honestly shocked. You know, it seemed like such a small, quiet place, and yet here was these heinous crimes being committed, you know, at a hotel that I drove by almost every day. It was shocking.
They are very serious charges. A person is looking at life-changing outcomes.
And then a couple hours later, he started calling me. He was desperate. And he's like, it's all a mistake. This didn't happen. Like, this is all wrong. And he was just, please, Shawnee, come bail me out. So I did.
Even though they are still separated, Shawnee picks Ron up. and brings him back to his house in Vail.
There was a note in his property that said, "You've been put on administrative leave." Like, the first thing he goes to do is try to access his email from his phone. And he's blocked out. Town of Vail blocked him out of everything. Like, he was locked out of all accounts, and he's basically telling me he's gonna kill himself. And I didn't want that on my shoulders, so I supported him for a while.
I wanted to say, Shawnee, let him go. Get away from him. But you knew he still had a lot of control over her. You know, he was a master manipulator.
The Vail papers didn't really run with the story. I thought it would be front page news in Vail that the IT manager would be arrested for, having sex with a minor prostitute. But I think it made it onto page 4, maybe. And there was certainly an embarrassment factor at the town of Vail that, this man had been under their nose this whole time and had committed this terrible, terrible crime. Some were concerned about what Ron Braden would do or say if they spoke to me. They didn't want their names in the paper. There was a pushback.
Everywhere Shawnee would go in town, people would be looking at her differently. Not because of anything she did, other than caring about a person who made some horrible, horrible decisions.
I was so thankful that maybe he was going to have to pay for some of what he did. My biggest fear, which turned out to be true, was that they downgraded his charges to where he just got probation after a sexual crime on a minor.
The other people who were leading the sex trafficking ring, both of them got long sentences, about 10 years. The judge ultimately agreed with Ron that he had been punished by losing his reputation and losing his job. He got a few years of probation and was sentenced to 100 hours of community service, but 0 jail time.
Ron is fortunate, but he is still enraged at his loss of status, and he blames everyone but himself.
I was worried when he got out of jail that Shawnee wasn't going to be safe.
He basically threatened to kill her. He threatened to kill cops. He threatened to kill other people.
It occurred to me that I had no idea who I was married to. Like, none. Like, I didn't know who he was, what he was capable of, who he would hurt, what he would do.
Shawnee tries to pick up the pieces and live her own life, but Ron won't let that happen.
I went on a trip to Arizona with a friend, and I came back, and my door was open. I walk into my apartment, and there are roses sitting on my coffee table. He has been in my apartment. Like, something is wrong here. And I was like, I'm scared.
Shawnee Mulligan is living in fear of her estranged husband, Ron.
I was scared. And it was because of those threats he made. I knew he had the weapons. I knew I had to get out. My boss actually ended up serving him my divorce papers because I was afraid to do that.
All the things that were going on, including Ron threatening to kill her, that started to have, psychological impact on her. And so she kind of reverted to not eating.
She developed an eating disorder after being raped at age 18 or 19. With her past history with the eating disorder, it was her way of dealing with the situation with Ron.
I never talked to anybody about it. I never dealt with it. I think that trauma started kind of setting in.
Adding to her present state of fear is the disconcerting feeling that Ron has been hiding dark secrets. One day, she discovers why Ron has so much disposable income.
I had one of his former associates call me, who I knew, and he's like, you should have the town of Vail look into this. There was some sketchy stuff that Ron was selling wireless that was owned by the town of Vail to private companies and then profiting by that.
Unsure of this information and what it means, Shawnee speaks to her dad.
I said, all of that is illegal. You're using resources from the city to make money. I said, that's embezzlement, and that'll get you 20 years if you're unlucky.
Immediately contacted my boss, and I said, I need to talk to you. And I went in and I was like, I don't have proof. I don't have any evidence, but this is what I was told. And, you know, my boss was just kind of like, okay. And then he's like, I need you to keep this to yourself. This stays between us. My boss, he just looks at me and he's like, Ron's troubles aren't over. There's more coming in the pipes.
As the investigation continues behind the scenes, Shawnee receives another terrifying threat.
Not long after, I was out on a trail at night, and this guy was coming up the trail, which was kind of unusual because it's pretty isolated. And he just said, hey, Shawnee, if you talk, there will be consequences. And I just turned around and ran back up the trail and just hid in the woods for like an hour. Like, I was terrified, and I was afraid to tell anybody.
In July 2020, Vail PD gets the go-ahead from the county DA to arrest Ron Braden on embezzlement charges.
I remember my boss was calling me, and where's he at? And I was able to find out through mutual contacts that he was down in Denver. And I'm like, it's hot, it's miserable, he's not gonna be in Denver for that long. He's gonna come back up to the mountains for the 4th of July, guarantee you. And he did come back up that day, 4th of July. And we're in briefing for the 4th of July parade. So I have my radio and I can hear everything that dispatch is saying. And my commander called me and he's like, what's he driving? I'm like, silver Ford van. He's like, big van? I'm like, yep. And then I hear on the radio, like, that they're pulling over a van. Vail PD asked Ron over and over again to get out of the van.
Nope.
And he refused.
Why?
We can explain it to you once you're out of the truck.
No.
No.
And Ron tried to drive away.
Ron, I'm telling you right now. Shoot me. There's a warrant for your arrest. Get out of the car. Shoot me. Get out of the car, Ron. Shoot me. Ron, I'll rip you out of this vent window if I have to. This is bullshit. Ron. What? There's a warrant for your... Ron, wait for me. No.
He's trying to get their guns, and he's just yelling and screaming at them.
Stop.
Stop.
He's fighting hard, and it takes 3 of them to drag him out of the vehicle and to get him cuffed.
Give me your hand on the ground, Ron!
You want to tase me?
Yeah.
Ron, stop.
Even once they get him to the ground and they get him cuffed, he's still fighting with them, you know, and he's still just fighting and fighting.
Ron. No, what? Don't play games. What did I do? You know what you did, Ron. What?
All right.
What the?
We're gonna sit you up, okay?
After he's arrested and taken away, they search his van, and one of the things they find is that AR-15 and a huge bag of ammo.
It's all 5.56.
When he was arrested, and once I knew everybody was safe, to me it was like, okay, it's over.
I'll go around. Step up there, Ron. Relax.
Ronald Braden is facing all kinds of charges, including embezzlement, theft, and assault on a peace officer. He allegedly hurt two of the officers who arrested him over the weekend. Braden worked for the town for 24 years.
Ron embezzled $854,000 from the town of Vail over a 6-year period. When Ron posted bond, he was immediately placed on an ankle monitor. And that ankle monitor was monitored by Vail PD 24/7. I was in briefing one day, and the detectives who was in charge of the phones looks at the phone. And then she looks at one of the other detectives, and I'm like, what's going on? And detective looks at me, he's like, stay. And they're like, he's near your place right now. By the time they got there, he was gone, but he had violated that protection order for me.
Ron continues to push the boundaries of his protective order, and Shawnee is living in fear.
8 months after his arrest, I was at work. A dispatcher comes over the radio and said there's been a tamper alert with Ron Braden's GPS monitor. And I just froze. And I was like, oh no, please tell me this is fake. They'd found both of his cars at different locations. Ron had cut his ankle bracelet off, left it in the snow. He was gone.
The former information technology director for the town of Vail is now a wanted fugitive. He's been accused of stealing more than $500,000 from the town. Now he's accused of cutting off his court-ordered GPS monitoring device.
Ron was on the run for a week. They were, everybody was looking for him. They were doing everything they could to look for him. I was scared.
Ron seemed to be unhinged enough that who knew what Ron was going to do. Shawnee came home that night, and our terror was at the point where we barricaded our whole house.
My brother was there, and he blockaded doors to stop anybody from entering. My parents were terrified that he was going to come down there. Kill me.
After a week in hiding, Shawnee decides to return to Vail.
And my boss called me, and he's pretty no BS kind of guy. He's kind of hemming and humming around. He's like, where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? And that's when he told me. Ron was tracked down to Arizona, and they'd put a violent crimes task force, SWAT team type, on him, and they were monitoring and watching him. The next day, he got into a vehicle, and they decided that was the best time tactically to pull him over. The task force, the agents, were trying to call Ron out, and all of a sudden they just heard shots. And he had killed himself. Ron had killed himself. I was like, why am I upset? I hate him. But yet I was just sobbing that he was dead. To this day, I don't know why I was upset. I hated this man. He had made my life hell. But I was with him for 8 years, right? I loved him, and he was gone. He's dead.
The first thought was, thank God he's dead, because Shawnee won't have to worry about him getting out and coming to kill her. If you've not been in a situation where you really feel that it's possible that somebody is looking to kill you, it's hard to understand it.
And I was broken apart. I still to this day don't understand him. I'm not sure I ever will. I had decided to leave Vail. I wanted a fresh start, and I had a friend who lived in Washington who I'd known for years. And she just bought a house there, and she's like, come be my roommate. And I was like, okay.
Shawnee has always been the kind of person who can make lemonade out of lemons. And I feel like with this experience, Shawnee is going to be able to continue to help other people.
There's just been this impact on me that will never go away, and I guess I have two choices. I can let it destroy me, or I can do something good with it, because I can't go back.
Shawnee tells her story to create awareness around both steroid abuse and the invisible crime of sexual coercion.
My hope is that people become aware of symptoms to look forward, such as isolation, change in personality in your child, and to not be afraid to intervene, to shine light on that spousal or significant other abuse or any type of domestic abuse.
You know, Shawnee's the bravest person I know.
I am so proud of her, and I pray every day, multiple times a day, that she finds true happiness in life.
I have an amazing family. My parents are amazing and they support me. And since moving to Washington, I've learned to make friends. That's what's key, and the friends I've made and the community I built. You know, love, I don't know, that's a whole.
The story begins with a sound no one ever truly forgets. An empty stretch of Texas highway, humming beneath a sky the color of burnt copper. A night so still it feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for something to break. And then it does. One scream, sharp and fractured, cutting through the darkness like a warning flare shot into the void. A scream swallowed by the wind, ignored by the roadside gravel, lost to the open fields that have always kept more secrets than they ever reveal. It's the scream the town will talk about for years, the moment that will become legend, the point in time that investigators will circle again and again, trying to understand what really happened on that October night in 2003. The night that would become the center of one of Texas's most haunting cold cases, a disappearance labeled mysterious, then unsettling, then unexplainable, until finally it carried the one phrase that chills a community to its core: cold case. No one knew then that 21 years later a confession would detonate like a bomb in the middle of town, shattering everything people thought they understood. But back in 2003, all they had was silence. Silence. And a missing girl named Lena Hart, a senior at Willow Creek High, last seen driving home from her late shift at a diner off Route 14. A girl whose voice still echoes through every retelling, bright, quick, full of the energy of someone who hadn't yet learned how dark the world could become. She clocked out at 10:42 p.m., waved to her coworkers, adjusted the strap of her backpack, and stepped into the night. Witnesses remembered the smile. People always remember the smile. It makes the tragedy sharper. The fall steeper, the mystery more brutal. She pulled onto the highway, her taillights shrinking into a red thread in the dark. And that was it. That was all the world saw of Lena Hart alive. The next morning, the panic was immediate. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Her bed was still made. Her cell phone, found abandoned at the diner parking lot, rang without answer. Sheriff deputies swept the highway, searched the ditches, questioned truck drivers, ranchers, night shift workers. The town moved like it was underwater, slow and stunned, aware something irreversible had already happened. Headlines went from local teen missing to mysterious Route 14, disappearance to Texas cold case deepens. With every passing day, the unease coagulated into dread, a dread that settled over the community, like fine dust creeping into conversations at grocery store aisles, whispered in classrooms and church pews, rattling through the town like a storm that wouldn't end. Investigators chased Manuel Lestrange footprints near an irrigation ditch, an abandoned hunting jacket, a report of headlights turning off near mile marker 22. Nothing led anywhere. Witnesses recalled a pickup parked on the shoulder that night, but no one remembered a license plate. Someone thought they heard a woman arguing with a man, but couldn't be sure. Someone else reported seeing a figure move through the fields carrying something heavy, but the darkness distorts memory. Every clue dissolved as quickly as it appeared. It was as if the night had swallowed Lena whole. Search parties combed acres of fields, dragging flashlights across the landscape until the batteries died. Dogs followed scents that vanished into nothing. A single strand of hair caught on a barbed wire fence was sent to a lab only to come back inconclusive. The case became a maze, twisting deeper each year, trapping detectives inside a web of contradictions and dead ends. Families locked their doors earlier. Teenagers stopped driving alone. Rumors multiplied: a stranger passing through town, a jealous ex-boyfriend, a trucker with a violent past. But nothing stuck. With no body, no evidence, no suspects, the town began to speak about the case in hushed tones, as if Lena herself were still listening. 21 years is a long time for fear to live in one place. Long enough for kids to grow up hearing the story like a warning carried down from their parents, long enough for entire families to move away because they couldn't bear driving that stretch of highway anymore. Long enough for the case file to be moved twice to the back shelf, then the cold case unit. Long enough for everyone to wonder if the truth had vanished forever. But the truth doesn't vanish. It waits. Sometimes in the dark corners of memory, sometimes in the cracks of guilt that widen slowly with age. Sometimes it waits inside a man who has carried a secret for 21 years, a man who finally walks into a sheriff's office with trembling hands and asks to speak to someone in charge. And when he sits down, when he opens his mouth, when the first sentence escapes his lips, the entire foundation of the case shifts, because the man claims he was there the night Lena disappeared. Claims he knows where she went. Claims he knows why no one ever found her. But that confession won't come until much later. For now, in the early days of the investigation, all the deputies had was the highway. The long, empty asphalt stretching through the Texas plains, mocking them with its stillness. The sound of cicadas rising and falling like a broken alarm. The feeling that the truth was standing just outside the reach of the headlights, watching. Detective Ray Holloway, lead investigator, became consumed by the case in a way that bordered on obsession. He drove the route every night, stopping at every turnout, every shoulder, every gravel patch, where tire marks cut patterns into the dirt. He studied Lena's schedule, mapped her habits, interviewed every acquaintance twice. He traced the route from the diner to her home so many times he could see it in his sleep. The flashing billboard for a pawn shop, the rusted mailbox halfway buried in weeds, the sharp curve near the cattle ranch. Each detail was burned into his memory, and yet none of it brought him closer. Holloway believed in patterns, but this case had none. Only anomalies. A teenage girl goes missing without a trace. No robbery, no sign of struggle, no known enemies. It didn't make sense. Cases like this rarely do until something rips the story open. As weeks turned into months, the town built its own mythology around the night of the disappearance. Some said Lena picked up a stranger. Others insisted she never left the diner parking lot. A few whispered about a secret boyfriend. But the story that stuck the strongest was the one no one wanted to say out loud, that she crossed paths with the wrong person at the wrong moment, and that person had been waiting. Investigators found her car 3 months later, deep in a thicket 30 miles south, half submerged in mud branches clawing at the windshield, as if the forest were trying to keep it hidden. The find triggered a new wave of panic. Inside the car, dirt leaves fingerprints too smudged to identify. Outside, footprints half washed away by rain. On the passenger seat, a single earring. But it wasn't Lena's. Her family confirmed that instantly. A stranger's earring, a woman's. Dark red enamel chipped at the edges. A clue that investigators clung to like a lifeline until it too led nowhere. The longer the case stretched on, the more it took from the town. The diner where Lena worked closed 2 years later. The owner said it never felt right after she disappeared, that every time he heard the bell above the door, he expected her to walk in smiling. Lena's mother moved away first, unable to pass the empty bedroom every morning. Her father left soon after selling the house to a family who didn't know the story, though they learned it quickly from neighbors who still lowered their voices at the mention of her name. Detective Holloway kept the case file on his desk until he retired. He said it felt like unfinished business, a weight he carried with him long after he hung up his badge. And still no answer. No suspect. No body. Only the road. always the road. No one imagined that the person who would break the silence after 21 years of mystery, grief, and dead ends was someone who had lived in town the entire time. Someone who passed the sheriff's station daily. Someone who watched every news update with steady, unreadable eyes. Someone who knew exactly what happened. Someone who finally couldn't hold the truth anymore. The years after Lena's disappearance hardened Willow Creek in quiet ways, slowly like drought carving lines into the earth. People learned to live with the uncertainty, but they never accepted it. Instead, it became part of the architecture of daily life, a shadow cast across the morning news, a whisper riding on the wind that swept through the open fields, a ghost at the edge of every town gathering. The absence of answers simmered beneath everything, as constant as the Texas heat, as persistent as the dust that clung to the windowsills. The case was no longer just an investigation. It was a wound, one the community learned not to touch. Detective Holloway, long before retirement, found himself slipping into rituals. He kept Lena's picture pinned to his dashboard, a faded reminder that the case wasn't cold because he had stopped caring. It was cold because the world had built too many walls around the truth. Every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, he returned to mile marker 22. He would turn off his headlights and sit in the dark, listening to the same night that swallowed her. Listening for anything, a clue, a memory, a whisper. Silence always answered. The new generation of deputies heard the story during training, a rite of passage into understanding the heart of the town's unease. One deputy, young, eager, still carrying optimism untouched by the brutality of real cases, once asked why everyone talked about the Route 14 disappearance as if it were still happening. Holloway told him that without justice, a crime never ends. It just changes shape. The deputy never asked again. Meanwhile, time reshaped the town. New houses rose on old lots. A gas station replaced the abandoned feed store. Kids who weren't born in 2003 grew up hearing Lena's story like a local legend, sometimes daring each other to drive the highway at night, sometimes lowering their voices when they passed the memorial marker placed by her family. Flowers were left there every year, though no one ever saw who placed them. The petals always wilted under the heat in a single day, but someone always returned to replace them. The cold case unit reopened the file twice, once in 2009, once in 2016. Each time, new investigators took turns digging through the same photographs, the same reports, the same dead ends. They attempted digital enhancements, geographic profiling, DNA reanalysis. They re-interviewed old witnesses whose memories had blurred like old photographs. Each attempt ended with the same hollow conclusion. Nothing new, nothing useful, nothing that pushed the case forward even one step. Some investigators said the case felt cursed. Others simply avoided looking at the photos after dusk. And yet the story refused to die. There was something about Lena, her smile, her youth, the abruptness of her disappearance that clung to the collective memory. The case became a symbol, a warning, a dark reminder that even small towns could harbor shadows deep enough to consume someone without leaving a trace. For years, the community lived with the idea that the answer might never come. But the answer was living among them. He was quiet, unremarkable. A man whose face blended into the background of everyday life. He worked odd jobs, moved apartments twice, attended church some Sundays. He never attracted suspicion because he never demanded attention. His life unfolded in the same slow rhythm as the town, but beneath it pulsed something darker, something carefully buried. For 21 years, he carried the weight of that October night, a weight that grew heavier with age, guilt, sleepless nights, the constant fear of discovery, and the echo of a scream he had tried to forget. His name was Caleb Monroe, and the town never saw him coming. But before Caleb would walk into the sheriff's office, the story needed to unravel from the beginning, from the night he claimed he crossed paths with Lena. That night lived inside his mind like a locked room sealed shut for decades. But even locked rooms leak, and guilt has sharp edges that slip through every crack. Over the years, the truth gnawed at him, carving tunnels through his conscience. At first, he tried to silence it with excuses he hadn't meant for things to go so far he hadn't planned anything, it was just an accident. Then denial hardened around him like armor. But time wears down every shield, and as his life grew smaller, quieter, lonelier, the truth inside him grew louder. Caleb lived less than 4 miles from the diner where Lena worked. Investigators never looked at him because he had no criminal record, no connection to her, no reason to cross her path. He was invisible in the way only certain men learn to be harmless on the surface, an afterthought in every room, a person no one looks at twice. Invisibility is a powerful disguise, one even law enforcement sometimes overlooks. He drove a beat-up blue pickup in 2003, a truck investigators vaguely remembered from conflicting witness statements. But the description was too generic. Half the men in town drove a blue pickup. Nothing pointed directly to him. Not then. Not for years. Meanwhile, the Hart family clung to every update, every rumor, every grain of hope that the new cold case team might find something the original investigators missed. Each false lead drained them further until hope itself became painful. The moment the case officially went cold was the moment Lena's mother stopped waiting by the phone. She wrote in her journal that day, "Hope is a door that keeps slamming shut." It was one of the last things she wrote before she moved away. For years afterward, the case existed only in the occasional article, the annual candlelight vigil, the memories of those who loved her, and the persistent rumor that the truth still lingered somewhere close, hiding in plain sight. People wondered if the person responsible had left town or died or slipped into a life so ordinary that no one ever thought to look their way. No one suspected that he walked the same sidewalk, shopped in the same grocery store, nodded politely at neighbors who didn't know they were greeting a ghost. Caleb's unraveling began with something small, a dream, a scream echoing down a highway, a pair of headlights cutting through fog, a name he hadn't spoken in years, whispered by a voice he didn't recognize. The dream woke him at 3:11 a.m., drenched in sweat, heart pounding. And for the first time, he didn't turn away from the memory. He let himself replay it even though every detail burned. From that night on, the dreams came regularly, each one sharper than the last. He started waking up trembling, sitting on the edge of his bed until sunrise, trying to breathe through the tightening in his chest. He drank more. He ate less. The weight of the secret that once felt manageable now pressed on him like a vice. At 52, he felt older than he was, worn down by a truth that refused to stay buried. The trigger came unexpectedly. A news report, a short broadcast, a brief mention of a new forensic grant awarded to the county funding new techniques for DNA extraction from degraded samples. It was 3 sentences, nothing more, but to Caleb, it was a jolt of pure terror. He froze, remote in hand, listening to the anchor say the words, "Cold Case Review." His breathing slowed. His palms sweated. The room felt too small, the ghosts too close. He knew then that the past was closing in. Over the next week, he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop hearing Lena's voice, though he knew he had never heard her speak more than a single terrified word. He started avoiding mirrors. He jumped at loud noises. At church, he stared at the stained glass windows as if waiting for the color to crack. Guilt had taken shape inside him, a living thing whispering that the truth always finds its way to the surface. On the 7th day, he broke. At 8:14 a.m., he walked into the Willow Creek Sheriff's office, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red, his hands shaking. The receptionist asked if he needed assistance. Caleb swallowed hard, stared at the floor, and said 6 words that would rip open 21 years of silence. "I need to confess to something." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water, sending ripples through everything the town thought it knew. Deputies looked up from their desks. A hush fell. The air changed. Those 6 words were the beginning of the end. The moment Caleb Monroe uttered those words, the entire atmosphere inside the sheriff's office shifted as if the temperature dropped a full 10 degrees. Deputies exchanged glances, quick, sharp, uncertain, because people walked in with traffic complaints or noise issues or custody questions. But no one walked in, Tira, the rambling, hollow-eyed, choking on words they hadn't been able to speak for 2 decades. The receptionist froze her pen hanging mid-air. The room went still, in a way that made every sound, every phone ring, every keyboard tap, every breath feel wrong. Caleb's voice cracked when he tried to speak again. Nothing came out. His throat tightened as if the confession itself were a physical object lodged inside him, struggling to break free. A deputy stepped forward, cautious, studying him like someone approaching a wounded animal half ready to bolt. "Sir, what exactly do you need to confess to?" The question floated between them like a flare. Caleb hesitated, his jaw trembling, his eyes glassy. "Something from a long time ago," he said, barely audible. "A cold case." Those 2 words electrified the room. Deputies straightened in their chairs. A quiet ripple of tension traveled across the desks. Cold case meant danger. Cold case meant ghosts. Cold case meant the possibility, no matter how faint, that one of the town's oldest wounds might finally rip open to reveal something real. One deputy's mind immediately jumped to the only cold case that mattered in Willow Creek. The one with a date burned into the town's collective memory, 2003. Caleb stumbled as the deputy guided him to an interview room, a stark white space with 2 chairs, a metal table, and a faint hum from a ceiling vent that blew cold, recycled air. He sat down heavily, clutching his hands together so tightly his knuckles whitened. His heartbeat thudded against his ribs. Every second felt heavier than the one before it. The unspoken truth clawed at him, demanding release. Detective Serena Holt, a newcomer compared to Holloway, part of the current cold case unit, was called in to take the statement. She walked into the room with steady steps, her expression unreadable, her mind already racing through endless possibilities. When she saw the man sitting there trembling as if his bones couldn't hold him up, she knew instinctively that something irreversible was about to unfold. She introduced herself calmly, but Caleb didn't lift his eyes. He kept staring at his hands as if afraid they might give him away before he spoke. Serena activated the recording device. The small click of the button echoed unnaturally loud in the room. "This is Detective Serena Holt interviewing Caleb Monroe," she said, her voice composed. "Mr. Monroe, you stated that you came here to confess. Can you tell me what this is regarding?" Silence, long suffocating silence. Caleb swallowed hard, his breath shuddering. Then, slowly, painfully, he forced out the words he'd avoided for 21 years. "It's about the girl. The one who went missing on Route 14. The one from 2003. Serena didn't move, didn't blink. Inside, her pulse quickened, but her face remained steady. She leaned in slightly, making sure she heard him correctly. "You're talking about the disappearance of Lena Hart." Caleb nodded once. A small broken motion. His eyes brimmed with fear, guilt, something primal. "I was there," he whispered. "That night. I was there." Serena's pen froze above her notebook. She steadied her voice. "Mr. Monroe, are you saying you had involvement in her disappearance?" His breathing turned ragged. His shoulders slumped forward as if 21 years of denial collapsed all at once. "I didn't mean to," he said, shaking his head rapidly, his voice cracking. "I swear I didn't mean for anything to happen, but I was there. I saw her. His voice caught, and for a moment no words followed, only the sound of air stuttering in and out of his lungs. Serena exchanged a glance with the deputies behind the one-way mirror. Every eye was locked on the man unraveling in front of them. This was the first real break the case had ever had. But confessions weren't always truth. They could be delusion, guilt, manipulation. She needed details, specific, irreversible details. "Tell me what you remember," she said gently, though her voice carried the sharpness of a blade. Caleb squeezed his eyes shut. The memory crashed into him with brutal force. "I was driving home that night," he muttered. "I shouldn't have been out there. I had been drinking. I wasn't supposed to be behind the wheel." His hands trembled uncontrollably now. The highway was empty. Too empty. And then, I saw her car pulled over on the shoulder. Headlights on. Driver's door open. Something was wrong. Serena leaned closer. What did you do? I stopped, he said. I thought she needed help. She looked scared. She was talking fast, something about someone following her or thinking someone was behind her. I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. His words came faster now, spilling out like an overfilled dam finally breaking. She asked if she could use my phone. Hers wasn't working. I fumbled for it. I dropped it. When I bent down to pick it up, she stepped back. She slipped. His breath caught again. She fell. Hit her head on the side of the truck. Hard. She stopped moving. I didn't know what to do. I tried shaking her, calling her name, but she didn't wake up. Serena's mind raced. The scenario was possible, but something felt off. Too simple. Too coincidental. You're saying she died accidentally, she asked, her tone unreadable. I think so, Caleb whispered. I panicked. I was drunk, terrified. I thought they'd think I did something. I thought. He pressed his palms over his eyes. I made it worse. I put her in the truck. Serena's stomach clenched. The deputies stiffened behind the glass. This was the first time in 2 decades anyone had claimed to know what happened after the highway. She steadied her breathing. And then what? Caleb paused, as if the next part required peeling away a layer of denial he'd kept wrapped tightly around himself for years. I drove, he said finally. I don't remember how far. Everything was a blur. I kept telling myself her eyes would open, that she'd wake up, that it was all a mistake. But she didn't. His voice dropped to a fragile whisper. I stopped somewhere near the old quarry. I carried her out of the truck. I thought maybe she needed air. I thought maybe she'd start breathing again. But she didn't. And then I left her there. Tears streamed down his face. I left her. Serena remained still, letting the words settle, letting the gravity of the confession sink through the layers of time that had kept the case frozen. Then she asked the question that mattered most. Where exactly did you leave her? Caleb hesitated. His jaw clenched. His breaths came sharp. He pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. I don't know, he said weakly. I don't remember. It was dark. I was drunk. I just know it was near the quarry. A thin crack formed in Serena's expression, not visible to those behind the mirror, but real. Because the quarry had been searched thoroughly in 2004, twice, and nothing had been found. Mr. Monroe, she said carefully, we need a precise location, even an approximate one. Caleb broke down again. I can't remember. I've tried for years. But the more I try, the further it gets. Serena studied him, her detective's instinct slicing through his story like a scalpel. There were truths hiding inside it, fear, guilt, memory, twisted by time, but something was missing, something critical, something that didn't line up. She pushed gently, but firmly. You said Lena told you someone was following her. Are you sure she said that? Caleb nodded slowly. She kept looking over her shoulder. She was scared. Really scared. Serena's pulse sharpened. That detail wasn't public. Investigators had kept it out of the news reports to filter out false confessions. For years, it had remained sealed inside the case file, which meant one of two things. Either Caleb was telling the truth, or someone involved had told him. She leaned in, her voice low, razor sharp. Mr. Monroe, did you see another vehicle on the highway? Anything unusual? Anything that made her afraid? Caleb froze. His breath hitched. His fingers tightened around each other. She wasn't alone, he whispered. The room stilled. I didn't see him, he said, voice trembling, but she did. She kept saying he was behind her, watching her, following her. She begged me to help her, and I didn't understand until it was too late. Serena's heart tightened. Who was following her? Caleb. He shook his head violently. I don't know. I swear I don't know. I only saw the truck. A dark truck. Big. Maybe black. Maybe dark blue. It parked behind her. Headlights off. I thought it was nothing. I thought he was just stopping too. Serena felt the hair on her arms rise. This wasn't a simple accidental death. This wasn't a drunk man panicking. This wasn't a case closed. It had never been one man. There had been someone else lurking in the dark that night. Someone Lena feared. Someone watching. Someone waiting. and that meant the cold case was about to explode open in a way no one was prepared for. The moment Caleb whispered that she wasn't alone, something inside Detective Serena Holt snapped to full alert as if a silent alarm had gone off deep within her instincts. The confession she thought she was hearing wasn't a straight line, it was a fracture, a split running down the center of the truth, revealing a second shadow in the dark. A presence no one had ever accounted for, a detail that had never surfaced in any interview, any rumor, any anonymous tip. For 21 years, the entire investigation had revolved around one missing girl, one abandoned car one night on an empty highway. But now, in this stark room buzzing with fluorescent lights and dread, the story widened like a crack spreading across glass. Serena leaned back just enough to stabilize her breath, but her heart raced as if trying to outrun the implications. "You said he parked behind her," she said quietly. "Did she tell you who he was?" Caleb shook his head, tears streaking down his face, his voice trembling like he was repeating something he had heard in a nightmare. No, she didn't say. She just kept looking back like she expected him to step out at any moment, like she knew him, or feared him, or both. His words fell apart as soon as they left his lips shredded by raw panic. Serena's thoughts sharpened into a razor. The idea that Lena recognized someone meant everything investigators had once theorized was wrong. Maybe the abduction wasn't random. Maybe the killer wasn't a stranger passing through. Maybe the answer had been living inside Willow Creek all along. The town had always been so certain that the danger came from outside some drifter, some trucker, some faceless traveler. But if Lena knew who followed her, the threat may have been much closer. Behind the one-way mirror, deputies had gone silent. Every person watching felt the ground shift. One man's confession had opened a buried passage towards something darker, more deliberate, more sinister than an accidental death. Serena could almost feel the weight of all the lost years pressing in the missed clues, the flawed assumptions, the narrow searches. 21 years of darkness now quivered with the possibility of new light. Describe the truck Serena pressed. Anything, make, model, stickers, damage, anything that stood out. Caleb wiped at his face with a shaking hand. It was big, taller than mine. Maybe a Ford, maybe a Chevy, I don't know. I only saw the shape. He turned off the headlights the moment he stopped. No lights at all. Like he didn't want to be seen. Serena exhaled slowly. Turning off headlights wasn't incidental. It was calculated, intentional. "Did you see him come out of the vehicle?" she asked. A haunted look flickered across Caleb's face. "No, but I felt him. I felt someone watching us. I know it sounds crazy, but the moment that truck pulled in, the air changed. She wasn't just scared, she was terrified." Serena let that sink in. Lena was already frightened before Caleb arrived. Someone had been following her long enough for her to pull over and get out of her car. Long enough for panic to set in. Long enough for her to try to flag down the first moving vehicle she saw, even if it was an intoxicated stranger. "So you think she was trying to get away from someone?" Serena asked. Caleb nodded sharply. "Yes. I swear she kept glancing at that dark truck like she expected the door to open. She kept asking, 'Did he follow me? Did he see me stop?'" Serena's pulse hammered through her veins. Which direction did the truck come from? Caleb closed his eyes, trying desperately to find the memory. Behind her, he said finally. Same direction she was driving. He must have been following her for miles. And after she fell, Serena continued, her voice a low current. "After you put her in your truck, what happened to the other vehicle?" Caleb's breath quivered. "It stayed there," he whispered. "Just stayed. Not moving. Not opening the door. Not turning on the lights. Just sitting behind her car, watching." A chill ran through Serena's spine. "And when you drove away," she asked carefully, "it followed." His voice cracked open. "Not right away. But a minute later, I saw headlights appear in my rearview mirror. Same height, same distance. Like he was tracking me. Like he wanted to see where I was taking her." Serena stiffened. This wasn't just a second presence. This was a predator. "Did he follow you all the way?" she pressed. "No," Caleb said quickly. "He turned off somewhere. I don't know where. I kept driving because I didn't want him to see me stop. I didn't want him to know where I was going. The room pulsed with tension thick enough to choke on. Serena studied him. Caleb, why didn't you tell anyone this 21 years ago? The question hit him hard. His shoulders sagged. His face crumpled. Because I was afraid. I was drunk. She was hurt. I thought they'd think I caused it. And when I realized she wasn't waking up, I panicked. Everything in my head, it just collapsed. I couldn't think straight. And then later, his voice cracked. Later, it felt too late to say anything. Serena let the silence rest. Let the guilt bleed out. Let the years of buried truth settle into the air like dust rising from a long-sealed room. Then she leaned closer. Caleb, she said softly, did you hurt her? He shook his head without hesitation. No. No, I swear, I never touched her except to try to wake her up. It was an accident. I never meant for anything to happen. I don't want forgiveness. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. Serena studied him for a long moment. His story wasn't clean. It wasn't perfect. Memory warped by time never is. But there were pieces. Private pieces, protected pieces that only someone present at the scene could know. And yet there was something else beneath his confession. Something unsaid. A tremor. A shadow. Something he was withholding, maybe out of fear, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of something darker he didn't want to confront. She pressed again slowly. Caleb, what aren't you telling me? His eyes flicked upward just for a second, but it was enough. There was something there, something heavy, something dangerous. I don't know his face, Caleb whispered, but I know he knew her. Serena froze. How? Because she kept saying one thing he said, voice breaking, over and over, like she was trying to convince herself it wasn't true. Serena's breath held. Caleb's voice trembled as he repeated the sentence that had haunted him for 21 years. He promised he'd never follow me again. The words sliced through the room. A promise, a history, a violation, a connection no one had ever uncovered. Lena had known her stalker. She had trusted him. She had believed his promises. And he had followed her anyway. Serena's pulse thundered. Her mind exploded with possibilities. Former boyfriends, teachers, neighbors, coworkers, anyone connected to her life in 2003. The suspect pool had just transformed from infinite to intimate. She leaned in one more time. Caleb, did she say his name? He trembled so violently the chair shook beneath him. No, he whispered, but she said he'd be angry. She said he'd be furious she drove alone. She said he'd warned her before. She kept saying he told me not to go out tonight. Serena felt the oxygen drain from the room. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This was control. This was obsession. This was someone monitoring her, watching her, dictating her life. A man who expected obedience. A man she feared enough to run from. A man the police never identified. A man who might still be alive, still in town, still watching. Serena steadied her breath. Caleb, is that all she said? His lips trembled. No, he whispered. What else? And then he delivered the line that detonated 21 years of silence. The line that made every deputy behind the mirror stiffen, the line that changed the direction of the cold case forever. She said Caleb breathed that he told her, if she ever tried to leave again, he'd make sure no one found her. Serena's blood ran cold. The cold case wasn't solved. It had just been reborn. The room felt smaller after Caleb whispered those words, like the walls leaned inward, like the air thickened around the truth that had been buried too long. Serena didn't speak right away. She let the weight of the sentence throb in the silence, the chilling promise that Lena had repeated in panic, the threat that carried her fear across 2 decades straight into this interrogation room. He'd make sure no one found her. A threat not made in haste, not yelled in anger, but spoken with the cold certainty of someone who believed he had absolute control over her life. Someone who believed he had the right to follow her, to monitor her, to punish her. Serena saw the deputies behind the mirror shifting their eyes wide, processing the revelation. 21 years of assumptions crumbled. The case had always been framed as a disappearance caused by a stranger or an accident. But this was intimate, personal, deliberate. This was the kind of threat that grows from obsession, manipulation, ownership twisted into violence. And somewhere inside the shadows of 2003, a man who made that promise had walked freely, blending into the town, hiding behind normalcy, while the mystery fossilized into a cold case. But now the fossil was cracking. Serena leaned forward, voice steady but edged with steel. Caleb, listened to me carefully. This man she was afraid of, this man she said would be angry. Did she ever describe him, anything at all? His voice, his height, what he drove? Caleb's face tightened as he fought his own fragmented memory. No. She didn't say his name. She just kept repeating that he shouldn't have followed her. She kept saying she told him it was over, that she told him to stop, that she didn't want to see him again. His breathing turned ragged. She was terrified. I didn't understand it then. But now I know she wasn't scared of me. She was scared of him. Serena's pulse sharpened. A breakup. A stalker. A promise of retribution. Cold case investigations teach you to look for the simplest path: jealous lover, controlling partner. Someone who thinks their attachment overrides someone else's freedom. But Lena's known relationships had been scrutinized thoroughly in 2003. The boyfriend at the time had alibis. Friends insisted there was no secret relationship. Teachers, co-workers, neighbors, no one raised suspicions. Yet there had always been something off about the original interviews. Details that felt too clean. Answers too rehearsed. People too willing to present a unified front. Something about the town's behavior in those early weeks had always gnawed at the edges of the case file. Now Serena felt that same tension stirring again, as if the town itself had been protecting someone. She pressed on. Caleb, when you drove away from the highway, when the dark truck followed you, how long did it stay behind you before it turned off? He closed his eyes, rubbing his forehead as though trying to peel decades off the memory. 5 minutes, maybe less. I kept looking in the mirror, hoping it wouldn't follow, but the headlights stayed right there. Then suddenly they were gone. Just vanished. Which direction? I don't know. I didn't see the turn. One moment the lights were there, and then they were swallowed by the dark. Serena inhaled slowly. Someone had stalked Lena long enough to scare her into pulling over. Someone who followed her even after she wasn't alone. Someone who trailed Caleb's truck before disappearing into the night like a shadow into fog. This man wasn't panicking. He wasn't improvising. He had a plan. Caleb, Serena said quietly, "Why didn't you tell anyone about the second vehicle?" His eyes filled with helpless agony. "Because if I did, they'd ask what I was doing there. They'd ask why I didn't take her to the hospital. They'd ask why I panicked." His voice trembled. "I thought I'd go to prison. I thought it would all come back on me." And after a few years passed, the shame was too big to speak through. Serena studied him, his hunched shoulders, his shaking hands, the way the confession seemed to peel him apart layer by layer. He was guilty of cowardice, of panic, of abandoning a frightened girl in the dark. But there was no malice in his account. No thrill, no predatory intent. Only fear twisted into a terrible decision. A man like Caleb didn't stalk someone for months. He didn't turn headlights off and follow silently. He didn't make chilling promises. He wasn't the monster in this story. He was the man who had wandered into the monster's path. Serena scribbled notes, but her mind churned faster than her pen. Someone in the town had known Lena intimately, someone she feared enough to run from. Someone she believed capable of hurting her. Someone who believed she belonged to him. She needed to identify every man in her circle, from 2003 friends, co-workers, regulars at the diner, teachers, neighbors, distant relatives, anyone who might have held a secret claim over her. But before that, she needed more from Caleb. "Tell me everything that happened after you left her at the quarry," Serena said, her voice quiet but firm. Caleb bowed his head, his entire body trembling. "I drove home," he whispered. "I tried to sleep, but I kept seeing her fall, the sound her head made. I kept telling myself I'd go back in the morning, that I'd check on her. Maybe she wasn't..." His voice broke. He swallowed hard. "But I didn't go back. Because when the sun came up, the town was already searching for her. And I told myself maybe someone else would find her, someone who knew what to do. Serena fought back a wave of frustration, not at him, but at the wasted years. If he had spoken, then the case would never have gone cold. They might have found evidence. They might have tracked the stalker. But guilt buries logic. Shame buries courage. And fear buries the truth, deeper than any grave. What about the weeks after she asked? Caleb's voice hollowed. Every day I expected someone to knock on my door. Every day I thought they'd find her where I left her. But they never did. And when they searched the quarry and found nothing, I convinced myself I was wrong about the location. I convinced myself maybe she woke up and walked away. Maybe someone else found her. Anything was better than the truth. Serena pressed. Caleb, is it possible you remember more than you're admitting? He looked at her with shattered eyes. I've asked myself that for years, he whispered. Every night I replay it, hoping something new will surface. But it never does. Just the same darkness, the same fear, the same scream. Serena tapped her pen softly, a rhythm of thought. Tell me the scream. Caleb's breath stuttered. It wasn't when she fell, he said, it was before. When I first stepped out of my truck. She screamed once, short, like she saw something behind me. And then she ran toward me like I was her only escape. Serena's blood chilled. She screamed because she saw him. Caleb nodded, hands trembling. Yes. And the scream came from the direction of the second truck. His eyes went wide, remembering, truly remembering. Yes, he whispered, from behind her car. Serena felt the truth click into place like a lock opening. The stalker wasn't merely following her. He was approaching her. She scribbled another note. One last thing, Caleb, before she fell. Did she say anything else? Anything about what he wanted? Anything about why he was following her? Caleb's voice trembled through the last line he'd been too afraid to speak for 21 years. She said she told him she was leaving town, that she was done with him, that she didn't want him showing up at the diner anymore. She said he told her she'd regret trying. Serena felt a slow, cold surge move through her chest. A man with a history, a man with a temper, a man who was possessive, a man who didn't accept rejection, a man who felt entitled to her movements, her routines, her presence, a man who followed her that night, a man who might still be alive. She closed her notebook slowly, the gravity of the discovery sinking deep. She studied Caleb, this trembling man who had carried a fractured truth for 21 years. He wasn't a killer. He was a witness too ashamed to come forward. But the killer, the man in the dark truck. He'd been waiting for this moment to surface again. Serena stood. Caleb, you're going to stay here for now. We need your full cooperation, and we need you safe. He looked up confused. Safe from who? Serena glanced toward the door, toward the cold Texas sun rising outside, toward the ghost that had haunted the highways for 2 decades. From the man who followed her, she said quietly. Because once a confession hits the air, the monster wakes up. The moment the words left Caleb's mouth, he said no one would find her. The interrogation room felt as if the floor shifted under Serena's feet, like the entire case tilted into a darker angle no one had dared consider. It wasn't just a threat. It was a blueprint. A declaration from someone who believed he had control not just over Lena's life, but over the story that would follow her death. A man confident enough to predict the future of a crime, certain enough to weaponize invisibility as if it were his birthright. Serena watched Caleb's trembling hands and realized she wasn't staring at a killer. She was staring at the first crack in a wall built 21 years ago, a wall designed to keep the truth silent. She leaned forward slowly, letting the tension coil, letting his fear breathe. Caleb, listen to me. When she said he promised no one would find her, how did she say it? Was she repeating something she'd been told before? Or did it sound like something he said that night? Caleb wiped his face with the back of his shaking hand, trying to chase away the memory. It didn't sound new, he whispered. It sounded old. Like a warning she'd heard before, like something he used to say to keep her in line. His voice cracked as he repeated it, soft or broken. She said it like it was a rule, a rule. Serena's pulse sharpened, not a threat shouted in the heat of the moment. A rule spoken by someone who believed he owned her fate. someone who'd been controlling her long before that night, someone who'd built fear inside her until it felt like gravity. But no one in 2003 mentioned a stalker. No whispers about a controlling boyfriend. No hints of a shadow in her life. Her friends said she was happy. Her coworkers said she was cheerful. Her teachers said she was confident. Someone had lied. Someone had hidden something. Or someone had scared her into silence. Behind the one-way mirror, deputies exchanged glances filled with the same shiver of realization. This wasn't just a case expanding, it was detonating. 21 years of misdirection, incomplete interviews, and dead ends suddenly twisted into a single chilling truth. Lena Hart had a tormentor. And that tormentor had stayed in the dark long enough to rewrite the entire narrative of the case. Serena inhaled slowly. Caleb, think carefully. Did Lena say anything else about him? Anything specific about why he was angry? Why he followed her? Caleb's fingers curled tightly together, knuckles white. She kept saying she wasn't supposed to be out that night, he said. Like she'd broken some rule he set. She said he told her to stay home. She said she didn't want to let him control her anymore. Serena stiffened. Did she say she was meeting someone? Going somewhere specific? He shook his head quickly. No. She just said she needed space. She kept saying I told him I'm done. She said it like she'd already tried to get away from him once. A heartbeat pounded in Serena's ears. Tried? Yes, Caleb whispered, like she left before. Like she tried to end it and he didn't let her. Something icy slid down Serena's spine. Someone in Lena's life had been doing more than following her. They'd been cornering her, isolating her, closing doors around her until she could barely breathe. And on that night in 2003, when she finally reached a breaking point, he followed her into the darkness like a shadow she could never outrun. Serena steadied her voice. Caleb, when you saw her on the highway, did she look like she'd been arguing with someone? Caleb nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. She looked, exhausted, scared. Like she'd been crying. She kept looking over her shoulder. She didn't recognize me at first. She just ran toward my truck because I wasn't him. Serena absorbed that slowly. If Lena couldn't even approach another vehicle without panic, the hold this man had on her must have been suffocating. What about the car door? Serena asked. Was it open when you arrived? Yes. Wide open. Caleb closed his eyes as if seeing it again. Driver's door open, the engine still running, like she got out fast. Like she didn't have time to think. Serena's thoughts raced. That detail had baffled investigators in 2003. The open door, the running engine. Nothing stolen, nothing broken. If Lena was trying to escape someone she already knew, someone she feared, someone whose presence froze her with dread. Leaving the car running made sense. She wasn't planning to stop, she was fleeing. Serena took a breath, her voice dropping into a low, steady cadence. Caleb, when she approached your truck, was she looking behind you or toward the other vehicle? He swallowed hard. Behind me, past me. Like she knew he was coming closer. And the scream Serena pressed. Tell me again where it came from. Caleb's face contorted as the memory stabbed through him. Behind her car, he whispered. From the dark. She screamed before she reached me. She screamed because she saw him coming. Serena's pulse thundered. Caleb, did you ever see his silhouette, even for a second? Caleb's lips trembled. He hesitated. Not because he lied, because remembering hurt. Yes, he whispered finally, just for a moment. The room stilled. A shape, Caleb said. Tall, broad shoulders. He stepped out of his truck for maybe a second. Then he stepped back when he saw me. Like he didn't expect anyone else to be there. Serena's breath hitched. Did Lena react when she saw him? Caleb nodded. She stopped running for half a second. Like she froze. Like she knew. That was it, she couldn't get away. He wiped his eyes again, and that's when she tripped. Serena leaned in. Tripped meaning she didn't fall because of you. No, he said immediately. I didn't touch her. She stumbled backward when she looked behind her. She hit the side of my truck. Hard. Behind the mirror, deputies stiffened. The fall, the head injury, the way her body went limp, it all aligned with the autopsy theorized decades earlier. But back then, they lacked evidence, lacked context, lacked the missing piece, the man she ran from. Serena's voice lowered. Caleb, this is important. After she fell, did you see him again? Caleb exhaled one long, shuddering breath. Yes. Serena froze. He was standing in front of his truck, Caleb whispered. Watching. Watching, not helping, not approaching, not shouting. Just watching. A predator studying the scene. A shadow evaluating a new obstacle. A man deciding whether to act or retreat and wait for another night. Did he come toward you? Serena asked. No. Caleb shook his head violently. He didn't move. He just watched. Like he was measuring me. Like he wanted me to take her. Like he was waiting to see where I'd go. Serena felt her stomach knot. He wanted to follow you. Yes, Caleb whispered. But he didn't follow for long. He wanted to see which direction I went. Once he knew he turned around, it was like he had a different plan. Serena scribbled fast. If the stalker turned off early, he wasn't giving up the chase, he was recalibrating. Choosing a new angle, a new route, a new hiding place. And suddenly, the quarry searches from 2004 made horrifying sense. They found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no remains. Because the killer never followed Caleb there. He went somewhere else. Somewhere Lena feared. Somewhere she knew he used before. Somewhere he was confident no one would find her. Serena exhaled sharply. Caleb, you said something earlier. You said she'd tried to leave before. Did she say where she wanted to go? He nodded slowly. She said she wanted to get out of town. She said she'd been saving money. That she had a place she used to hide when the things got bad. Somewhere she thought he didn't know. Serena froze. Where? Caleb swallowed hard. She never said. She just said she had a place, a safe place. A safe place, a secret place. A place she believed he didn't know. But he did. Because he always followed. Serena stood up abruptly, chair scraping the floor. She had to move, had to think, had to chase this new current of truth through every unsolved corner of the case. But before she left the room, she looked at Caleb one last time. You're staying here, she said quietly. Until we find him. Caleb's eyes widened. Why you think he's still out there? Serena didn't blink. I think he never left. She stepped out, heart pounding, mind racing. Because for the first time in 21 years, they weren't looking for a ghost. They were hunting someone alive. The town didn't feel it at first, the way the ground had started to shift beneath its feet, the way a 21-year-old cold case had quietly thawed into something alive and dangerous again. But the sheriff's office felt it. The air seemed charged like the heavy stillness before a storm. Phones rang with a different urgency. Footsteps sounded sharper in the hallways. Every deputy knew that somewhere inside the mess of old names, old interviews, and forgotten details, there was one man who had followed a girl into the dark and never been held to account for it. Serena moved like she was running against time that hadn't yet started counting, flipping through old employment logs, customer tabs, handwritten notes from managers who never thought their words would matter 20 years later. The diner's old ledger was cracked, its pages yellowed and smelling faintly of grease and coffee. She traced her finger down the list of regulars' eyes, scanning dates, times, patterns. She wasn't looking for a face. She was looking for a rhythm, someone who appeared too often, stayed too late, hovered too close. A name kept surfacing, not circled, not highlighted, just present, quietly persistent, appearing on weekday nights, late evenings, near closing time, always within an hour of Lena's shift ending, always paying in cash. No complaints logged, no incidents filed, just initials on a page, J. Crowell. She flipped further back. There he was again, and again. Weeks, months, a ghost written in ink. Who are you? She muttered under her breath. Deputy Rhodes approached with a folder. I pulled the neighborhood reports from that year, he said. There's something odd. 3 calls about a truck idling on side streets near the Hart House late at night. Caller anonymous. No unit ever found anything when they followed up. He paused. The notes say the truck's headlights were off. Serena's pulse tightened. Description: full-size pickup, dark color, possibly black or navy. Couldn't confirm the plates. By the time patrol arrived, it was gone. Headlights off, same pattern, same silence, same shadow. Who took those calls, she asked. Roads checked. Night shift operator logged them as suspicious vehicle. Nothing followed. No case opened. Of course not, Serena thought. In 2003, it was just an odd truck. Now it was a ghost print of a stalker. Look for any connection between these calls and this name, Serena said, tapping the ledger where Crowell's initials appeared. Anyone living near the Hart family with that surname. Anyone with a truck registered. Anyone who worked a job that kept them on the road at night. Rhodes nodded and hurried off. Serena stared at Lena's photo again, that frozen smile under fluorescent diner lights. Did you try to tell us, she whispered? Did we just not listen? She pushed away from the table and headed out of the station. Some answers don't live in files. They live in the spaces people leave behind. The Hart house stood at the edge of Willow Creek, a one-story structure whose paint had peeled under the Texas sun, the yard overgrown with stubborn weeds. The current owners kept the curtains closed, but the shell of the place still held echoes. Serena stepped out of her car and listened. Wind dragging over dry grass. A distant dog barking. The faint rumble of a semi on the highway Route 14, always there, always humming like an old wound. She walked the sidewalk, imagining a truck idling at midnight. Headlights off. Engine low. A man with his hands on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the front door. Waiting. Watching. Making good on a promise Lena had repeated in fear. He told me no one would find me. Across the street, an older woman watered potted plants on her porch movements, slow, careful. Her eyes lingered on Serena, measuring her, recognizing the stance of law enforcement from a distance. Afternoon, Serena called gently. Mind if I ask you something? The woman hesitated, then nodded. You're here about the girl, aren't you? Her voice carried the weight of years. The one who went missing. Serena approached. Yes, ma'am, I am. The woman exhaled. They never stopped coming, she said softly. Questions, officers, new faces. You'd think after all this time the story would grow old. It never did. Serena nodded. Did you know her? She used to babysit my granddaughter, the woman said, eyes softening with memory. Sweet thing. Too kind. Too trusting. Serena's voice lowered. Did you ever notice anything strange back then? Anyone watching the house? Any vehicles that didn't belong? The woman's gaze shifted past Serena toward the street, as if seeing a different version of it laid over the present. For a moment, her hand tightened on the watering can. There was a truck, she said quietly. I told the police back then, but they never found anything. Sat right there. She pointed to the curb. Several nights, lights off, engine running low, like it was trying not to be noticed. Did you see the driver? Serena asked. No, the woman murmured, but I saw the shape once. Tall, broad, always alone. Serena's heart hammered. Do you remember anything else Sticker's color sound? The woman frowned, digging through old layers of fear. Dark, hard to see in the night. But the engine had a rough sound. Old, worn down. Not like the new trucks. And once, she paused, eyes narrowing as a detail surfaced. Once I heard the door slam and a man say something. Couldn't catch the words, but his voice was calm. Too calm. Like he wasn't worried about being seen. Serena caught that word, calm. Not nervous, not rushed, comfortable in the dark. Did Lena ever mention someone bothering her? Serena asked. The woman hesitated longer this time. When she spoke, her voice dropped to a near whisper. She mentioned a man once, she said. Said she wished some customers didn't know her name. Said there was one who lingered too long. Stayed after closing. Offered her rides she didn't want. Serena's pulse climbed. Did she say who he was? No, the woman said. But she said something that stuck with me. Her eyes met Serena's. She said he made her feel like she owed him something. For tips. For attention. For just being polite. She said he acted like she was the one leading him on. A chill crept up Serena's spine. Entitlement, reversal, blame, classic predator behavior. Did she say he was local? Serena asked. Yes, the woman answered without hesitation. She said he knows where I live. Serena thanked her and walked back to the car, her mind burning. A local man, older, frequent customer, late nights, dark truck idling near the house, tips used like leverage. It wasn't a ghost she was chasing. It was a man who'd never been confronted, never exposed, never forced into the light. Back at the station, Rhodes met her at the door. "You're going to want this," he said, holding out a thin file. "I ran the Crowell name like you asked. We've got a Jonathan Crowell, mid-40s, in 2003, lived 3 blocks from the Hart family. Owned a construction business. Guess what he drove?" Serena's jaw clenched. "Tell me." "Black 1998 Chevy pickup," Rhodes said. "Full size. Plate history matches multiple sightings from that era. Sold the vehicle in 2007. No record of where it ended up." Serena took the file, flipping through the basic profile. Married at the time. 1 child, no criminal record, active in church, volunteered on community projects. The file read like a checklist of a safe, upstanding citizen. But she'd seen this before. Predators who hid behind respectability. Monsters who knew that the safest mask was the one everyone trusted. "Did he ever get interviewed in 2003? Serena asked. Rhodes scanned the log. 1 brief statement. He said he didn't know Lena personally. Just saw her at the diner, like everyone else. He claimed he was home the night she disappeared. No one verified. They didn't push. Of course they didn't, Serena thought. Why would they? He fit the town's picture of a man you don't question. "Where is he now?" she asked. Rhodes inhaled. "Still here." The word hit like a hammer. "Still," Serena repeated. "Still," Rhodes confirmed. "Same town, different house. Wife divorced him 10 years ago. Daughter moved away. He lives alone on the outskirts near the tree line. Alone, near isolation, near the kind of quiet where memories echo louder." Serena closed the file. "Get a unit to keep eyes on him," she said, "from a distance. Headlights off. If he's our ghost from 2003, I want to see how he moves in the dark now." Rhodes nodded and hurried off. Serena walked back to the interrogation room where Caleb still sat slumped, wrung out from confession. He looked up as she entered, eyes red, expression fragile. "Did you find him?" he asked, voice shaking. The man she was afraid of. "Maybe," Serena said, "but I need you to confirm something." She laid a photo on the table, old photocopied, grainy. Jonathan Crowell at a town fair in 2002, holding a paper cup, smiling a practiced, harmless smile. "Have you ever seen this man?" she asked. Caleb's eyes locked onto the image. Everything in him went still. His breathing stopped for a fraction of a second. And then the color drained from his face. "That's him," he whispered, voice hollow. "That's the man standing by the truck. That's the one she kept looking at like he was the end of the road." Serena didn't move, didn't flinch. The room seemed to tilt as 2 decades of static snapped into focus. The cold case finally had a face. And the town's worst nightmare was someone they'd been nodding to in the grocery store for 21 years. The house sits at the edge of town like it knows it's being watched. A low, tired structure half swallowed by trees and the thick Texas dark. A wind moves through the branches with a sound like quiet voices. But the driveway is empty, the curtains drawn, the yard littered with tools that look abandoned mid-task. It could be any man's house, any life, any story. But tonight, it is something else. Tonight, it is the center of a 21-year-old cold case, the place where ghosts and evidence might finally collide. Unmarked cars idle with their lights off, a few houses down, engines ticking softly. Deputies stand in the shadows, vests, heavy radios muted, waiting for a signal that will send them forward. It is just before dawn, that brittle hour when the world hasn't decided yet if it wants to wake up. The kind of hour predators like, the kind of hour good cops learn to move in. Serena stands behind the lead unit, warrant in hand, mind racing through every step they've taken to get here. The diner logs the neighbor's memory of the idling truck. The calls about headlights. Off surveillance. The photo Caleb identified with a single hollow whisper. That's him. She feels the weight of those words now, like a hand between her shoulders, pushing her toward the front door of Jonathan Crowell's life. The sheriff nods to her. "You sure you want point on this?" Serena's voice is calm, but there's a current under it. He's mine, she says simply. The team moves in coordinated silence boots on gravel, the smell of damp earth mixing with old oil stains on the driveway. A porch light flicks on inside, triggered by the motion, casting a dull yellow rectangle across the front steps, like a spotlight no one asked for. For a split second, Serena imagines him on the other side of the door, already awake, already listening, already calculating. They stack at the entrance. The sheriff pounds on the wood fist hard and sharp. Sheriff's office. Jonathan Crowell. We have a warrant, open the door. Silence stretches thin. A light comes on deeper inside the house. Footsteps. Not hurried, not panicked. Just measured. A lock clicks. The deadbolt slides back. The door opens. Jonathan Crowell stands framed in the doorway in a faded t-shirt and worn jeans, hair matted from sleep, expression puzzled. He looks like any middle-aged man dragged from bed too early. Eyes slightly puffy, jaw rough with stubble. Not monstrous, not feral, just ordinary. The worst ones always do. What's this about, he asks, voice low, steady, more annoyed than afraid. Serena steps forward, warrant open. Jonathan Crowell, this is a search warrant for your property vehicle and any secondary structures. We're reopening an unresolved investigation. You need to step outside while we clear the house. His eyes flick to the paper, then to her face, a flicker of recognition. He's seen her on the news talking about the cold case unit, talking about Lena. His mouth tightens in the smallest of movements, like a man biting down on something sharp before it can slip out. Unresolved investigation, he repeats slowly. You people never stop digging, do you? Some holes were never dug deep enough, Serena says. Step outside, Mr. Crowell. He hesitates a fraction too long. Then he smiles, small, controlled, chilling in its restraint. Sure, he says. I've got nothing to hide. They always say that. Deputies move past him into the house, sweeping each room with practiced motions. Serena stays on the porch with Crowell, eyes on his posture, the set of his shoulders, the way his fingers flex at his sides, as if resisting the urge to reach for something. He looks like a man who has spent his whole life pretending to be harmless. You've lived in this town a long time, Serena says, almost conversational. He shrugs. Born here, built houses here, paid my taxes, sat in church. You'll find a lot of nothing behind that door. You know why we're here, she says. His eyes flicker again just for a heartbeat. I saw the news, he answers. You've got someone spilling his guts in there, right? Some drunk from the past trying to clean his soul. He say my name. The fact he jumps straight to that without being told laces the air with something sour. We'll talk about that later, Serena replies. Inside drawers open. Cabinets creak. A deputy calls out, clear. Another echoes. A third voice shouts, basement door located. Serena hears the subtle doubt in that tone. Crowell's property records never mentioned a basement. Her gaze sharpens. Basement. Crowell's jaw tightens before his mouth does. Microsecond. Gone almost as soon as it appears. Old storage, he says. House came with it. Serena doesn't answer. She steps past him, following the deputy down a narrow hallway that smells like dust and something metallic. At the end of it, a wooden door waits, paint-chipped handle worn smooth by years of use. A heavy padlock hangs open, as if someone forgot to close it in the rush of being woken up. Or as if someone knows there's no point locking a secret that's been safe for 2 decades. Lights, Serena asks. The deputy shakes his head. None wired. Just a pull cord at the bottom from what I can see. She pulls a flashlight from her belt. The beam slices down the steep, narrow stairs, cutting through dust and cobwebs. The air rolling up from below is colder, heavier, touched with the faint smell of damp wood and something else she can't name yet but doesn't like. Stay up here, she tells one deputy. If he moves, you move faster. She descends slowly, each step hollow underfoot. The flashlight catches old shelves, plastic bins, a workbench cluttered with tools whose shapes are too vague in the half-light to fully trust. At the bottom of the stairs, she finds the pull cord, gives it a tug. A single bulb flickers to life overhead, casting a sickly glow across the room. On the surface, it looks ordinary. Storage boxes, old paint cans, a lawn chair folded against the wall, but Serena has spent years staring at rooms exactly like this room's, trying too hard to look like nothing. She sweeps her light again slower, more deliberate. That's when she sees it. One section of the concrete floor doesn't quite match the rest. Slightly smoother, slightly lighter. A rectangle just large enough. The edges aren't sharp, but once you know what you're looking at, they're impossible to unsee. Get forensics down here, she calls up, voice low but firm. Now. Her stomach knots. This could be anything: old plumbing, a repair patch over a crack. Or it could be exactly what her instincts are screaming it is. Rhodes joins her eyes, widening as he follows her gaze. Jesus, he breathes. Don't say it, Serena snaps. Not yet, not until we know. They photograph everything, every angle, every corner. They mark the edges of the odd concrete. Measure it. A saw comes down. The whine of the blade fills the basement, a high tearing sound that feels wrong in the enclosed space. Dust rises. Everyone wears masks, but the air still tastes like chalk and old secrets. Crowell stands at the top of the stairs, hands cuffed now, watching with an expression that hovers somewhere between annoyance and amusement. You're ruining my basement, he calls down. You planning to pour it again when you're done chasing ghosts? Serena looks up at him, light reflecting off her eyes like glass. Ghosts leave bones, she says. Let's see what your floor has been keeping warm. The blade cuts clean. The concrete lifts. A smell hits them first. Not fresh, not sharp, but heavy. Old. Lingering. The smell of something that once lived and then didn't, trapped for years beneath stone. Forensics kneel, gloved hands, careful, precise. Serena doesn't breathe as the trowels scrape through the soil, through layers of compacted earth and time. Every inch they move feels like a decade peeling away. Then the metal edge hits something that doesn't sound like rock. The room goes quiet. Bit by bit, piece by piece, the shape emerges. Curved, white, familiar in a way no one ever gets used to. A fragment of a skull, a tooth still anchored in bone. A thin, rusted chain tangled in what remains of a neck. No one speaks her name, but it fills the room anyway. Serena's throat tightens. We need to handle this right, she says quietly. Every millimeter, every thread, every piece. Rhodes swallows hard. You think it's her. I think he didn't want anyone to find her, Serena replies. And this is how men like that keep promises. Upstairs, the first siren wails not from a cruiser, but from the phone lines as the news begins to move. A body found. A cold case cracked open. A house at the edge of town sealed with crime scene tape. By the time the sun fully climbs over the horizon, neighbors will be on their lawns, hands over mouths, whispering the name they haven't said out loud in years. Lena Hart. Inside the basement, as the remains are lifted with reverence and horror, Serena feels the shape of the story shifting. The headline that had always hovered over this town, "Teen Vanishes on Texas Highway," is about to transform. Now it will read like a punch. Texas 2003 cold case solved, confession after 21 years shocks town. But even as the word solved forms in her mind, Serena knows something else. Solving a case on paper is not the same as untangling the truth. A body in the basement proves where she ended up. It doesn't yet prove who put her there. It doesn't yet explain the truck behind her car. The scream on the highway, the man she feared. For that she needs Crowell in a chair. She climbs the stairs, the smell of the basement clinging to her like a second skin. Crowell tilts his head as she approaches. Eyes calm, lips barely curved. Well, he asks, find anything interesting? Serena studies him for a long, heavy second. Then she answers with the simplest, sharpest truth. We found the part of your promise you couldn't keep buried, she says. His smile fades just enough to fracture. The interrogation room is waiting, and somewhere inside him, the version of himself he's kept hidden for 21 years is waking up, stretching, deciding what to say now that the earth has finally given Lena back. The interrogation room feels smaller now, like the walls know exactly what's sitting beneath that house at the edge of town. Crowell takes his seat as if he's doing them a favor. Cuffs clinking softly against the metal chair posture, relaxed eyes sharp. He doesn't look broken. He doesn't look cornered. He looks curious. like a man who has spent his life watching other people move around him without ever truly touching him, and now he's waiting to see what they think they've learned. Serena sits across from him, a recording device between them, the red light steady. She doesn't slam files, doesn't shout, doesn't posture. She just studies him, quiet, patient, as if she has all the time in the world. Outside, deputies hover near the glass hearts pounding with the knowledge of the bones under the basement floor. Inside, Serena moves differently. This isn't about rage. It's about pressure. It's about weight. It's about turning 21 years of silence into something that finally cracks. State your full name for the record, she says. He leans back, the chair creaking. Jonathan Paul Crowell, he answers, voice calm, unhurried. Jonathan, she says, you understand why you're here. He offers a half smile that doesn't reach his eyes. From the way your people are tearing up my house, he says, I'm guessing this is about your favorite ghost story. The girl from Route 14. Serena doesn't look away. Her name is Lena Hart. His expression twitches barely. A flicker. Something almost like recognition. Then it's gone. Right, he says. That one. Serena folds her hands over the file, letting the silence stretch just far enough to be uncomfortable. We found remains beneath your basement floor, she says evenly. Human remains. Female. Approximately the same age and size as Lena Hart at the time of her disappearance. He doesn't flinch. If anything, his gaze grows colder. You dig under any old house, you'll find something, he says. Animals, bones, junk someone forgot. You want to hang a 20-year-old case on whatever the ground gives you, that's on you. Serena's voice never rises. We also have a witness, she says. Someone who saw you on Route 14 the night she disappeared. Someone who saw your truck parked behind hers. Someone who saw you standing there watching her run. For the first time, there's a crack. Not in his composure, he keeps that intact like a suit of armor, but in his eyes, which narrow just a fraction. A witness, huh, he says. Convenient how they show up after 2 decades. He carried it for 21 years, Serena replies. The guilt, the fear, the memory of you standing there with your headlights off while a terrified girl begged him for help. Crowell leans forward slightly. If this guy was there, he says you should be talking to him, not me. Sounds like he was the last one with her. Serena lets that hang. We have spoken to him, she says. He told us what Lena said on that highway, that you'd followed her before, that you watched her house, that you promised her no one would ever find her if she tried to leave you. For a heartbeat, he stops breathing. There it is, Serena thinks, the line he didn't expect to hear repeated. You were never her boyfriend. She continues quietly. You were a customer. An older man who thought tips bought access, a man who stayed past closing, a man who sat outside her house in the dark and called it love. His jaw tightens just once. His fingers curl around the edge of the table knuckles, whitening. Something shifts behind his eyes, not panic, not yet, but awareness. She's closer than he thought. You've been talking to a lot of people, he says finally. You ever notice how stories change over time? People remember things they want to remember. They make themselves important part of something big. Serena nods. You're right, she says. Memories shift. People distort. But there are some things that don't change. She opens the folder and slides a photo across the table, grainy old, but clear enough. His black truck parked near the curb outside the Hart house, taken by a nervous neighbor with a disposable camera 2 months before the disappearance. The photo never made it into evidence properly. Misfiled, overlooked. Until now. We found this in an old box, she says. Funny how ghosts leave fingerprints when they're not careful. He stares at the photo, and for a moment the room is very, very quiet. That could be any truck, he says. But it isn't, Serena answers. It's yours. We've matched the plate. Same year, same make, same model you owned in 2003. Same dent in the front bumper you filed an insurance claim on. You were there, Jonathan, not once, not twice, regularly, watching her house at night. He looks up at her, and something in his face has changed and gone, is the lazy irritation, the casual annoyance. What's left is sharper, colder, more honest, more. Watching isn't a crime, he says softly. Serena holds his gaze. No, she says, but burying a body in your basement is. He doesn't answer. She clicks a pen, the sound small but cutting. Let's talk about your basement, she says. You bought that house in 2001. Records show no foundation work until late 2003. You paid cash to a private crew, no permit, no inspection to reinforce the floor. The exact patch we opened today. You've lived above that concrete for 21 years, slept above it, ate above it, went about your life while her family fell apart. He smirks, but it's forced now. The edges shake. That's a nice story, he says. You going to read it on TV? Make it sound pretty for the camera's town monster exposed. People love a villain. They do, Serena agrees. But they love the truth more. And right now, the truth is crawling out of your basement piece by piece. He scoffs quietly. You think evidence is truth, he asks. Evidence is just what you can scrape off the surface. You don't know what happened. Serena leans in. Then tell me, she says. Tell me what happened, Jonathan. You followed her that night. You watched her pull over. You watched her run. You watched her scream. You watched her fall. And then you watched someone else panic while you stood in the dark. His eyes narrow. Someone else, he repeats. Caleb Monroe, Serena says. The man you've been hoping would stay quiet forever. He's in the next wing right now, choking on everything he's held in for 21 years. He told us what Lena said. He told us how you stepped out of your truck just enough for her to see you. He told us how she froze when she recognized you. Crowell's tongue moves across his teeth slow. Caleb Monroe, he repeats as if tasting the name. Is that what this is? Some poor drunk trying to rewrite his guilty conscience? He didn't bury her, Serena says. You did. And then finally, something cracks. Crowell laughs. It's not loud, not wild, not hysterical. It's small, sharp, chilling. The laugh of someone who's lived with the private version of this story for so long that hearing the wrong version almost amuses him. You really think you've got it, he says. Don't you? Serena doesn't move. I think you've spent 21 years telling yourself you were smarter than everyone else, she says. Smarter than the cops who missed the basement. Smarter than the neighbors who saw your truck. Smarter than a terrified girl who thought she could escape you. And now you're sitting across from me, and there's a part of you that wants to show me just how right you were. His eyes flick to the recorder, back to her. You know why men like you talk, Serena says quietly. Not because they're forced to, because they can't stand the idea that someone else will write their story. They need control. They need to be the one to define what happened. They need to be the headline. She lets the words settle. In here, she doesn't say cold case or murder or killer. She says the one thing a man like Crowell fears most. You're not in control anymore. He sits very still. The seconds stretch. For the first time, his mask isn't just cracked, it's slipping. Behind it, Serena sees something raw. Not regret, not sorrow, just anger. Cold, wounded anger. The anger of entitlement denied. You think she was innocent, he says, voice flat. Serena doesn't blink. She was a teenage girl trying to live her life, she answers. You turned that into a battlefield. He shakes his head slowly. She played with fire, he murmurs. She liked attention, smiled at everyone, took tips, flirted. Then she wanted to pretend none of it meant anything. Pretend she didn't owe anyone a damn thing. That's not how it works. Serena feels the room sharpen around his words. Behind the glass, someone swears under his breath. That's the thing about men like you, Serena says softly. You think kindness is a contract. You think a smile is a promise. You think you get to decide the price. He looks her dead in the eye. I didn't decide the price, he says. She did, when she tried to walk away. There it is. Walk me through it, Serena says. From the diner to the highway, you followed her. He exhales, long, slow, like a man finally sitting down inside his own story. I told her not to go out that night, he says. Told her it wasn't safe. Told her people weren't who they said they were. She laughed. Said I was being dramatic. Said I didn't own her. He spits the last word like it offends him all over again. I saw her leave, he continues. I waited. Then I followed. I didn't rush. I knew where she was headed. She always took the same route. Same time, same lane. Creatures of habit are easy. Serena remains silent, letting his words fill the space. She saw me in the mirror, he says. I could tell. She started speeding up. I let her. Fear makes people sloppy. She pulled over. I stayed back. Let her think she had space. She got out, kept looking around. I stepped out once. Just enough so she'd know it was me. Just enough to remind her that she doesn't get to make promises she can't keep. And then Serena prompts, voice steady, though her pulse is hammering. And then some idiot pulled over in front of her. Crowell says, disgust curling in his tone. Guy reeked of bad decisions. She ran to him like he was a lifeline. Funny thing about desperation, he smiles thinly. It doesn't care who you grab onto. You watched her run, Serena says. Watched her scream. I watched her choose wrong, he replies. Again. His eyes grow distant for a second, replaying the moment. She slipped. Hit the truck. Went down hard. I knew that sound. Heard it on job sites, bone and metal. She didn't get back up. And you, Serena asks. I waited, he says simply. Watched the drunk panic. Watched him shove her into his truck like a bag of trash. Watched him drive off like the world was chasing him. I could have stopped him. But why he was doing me a favor? Serena's stomach twists. I followed long enough to see where he turned. Krell continues. Didn't need to go all the way. I knew he wouldn't keep her. Men like him don't follow through. They fold. They hide. They run home and drown themselves in guilt. I'm not built like that. His eyes sharpen on Serena again. I doubled back, he says. Took a different road. I knew where she hid when she was scared. Knew the places she thought I didn't know. She wasn't at the quarry. She'd never be at the quarry. She hated open spaces. She liked walls, closets, corners. His lips curl at the memory. I'd seen her once before behind the diner, crying near the storage shed. Thought no one saw. She was wrong. People like me see everything. Serena's voice is barely a whisper now, so where did you go? He smiles slow and cold. Home. The word lands like a stone. I knew the pattern, he says. They'd spend days looking along the highway. They'd search the fields, the quarry, the river. No one ever looks at the monster's house first. Too obvious. Too close. Too unthinkable. He tilts his head. I waited until the noise died down, until the sirens faded, until the search parties lost steam. Then I took my truck. Took my time. You don't rush something you plan to live above. Serena feels the room tilt around his confession. You moved her, she says, from wherever he left her to your basement. He spreads his cuffed hand slightly as if presenting a conclusion. Kept my promise, he says. No one found her. For 21 years, Serena thinks. For 21 years, her parents wondered if she was out there. For 21 years, this man ate dinner over her grave. You think this makes you clever? Serena says, voice shaking just slightly now, but not from fear. From fury held on a leash. You think being the last one to tell the story means you win. He studies her, searching her face for something admiration, fear, horror. She doesn't give him any of it. Here's the thing, Jonathan, she says quietly. You lost the moment you needed control more than you needed her alive. You lost the moment you turned a girl into a secret. You lost the moment you poured concrete over a promise and thought time would keep it safe. She reaches forward and clicks the recorder off. The tiny click echoes like a gunshot. This part's off the record, she says. Just so we're clear, I don't need you to admit what you are. The evidence will do that for you. The basement will do that for you. Caleb will do that for you. You can talk, or you can stay silent. Either way, the story is no longer yours. For the first time, she sees something that looks like real fear flicker in his eyes, because control has always been his currency, and now it's gone. Outside the room beyond the glass, the sheriff turns to his deputies, voice low, steady. Get ready, he says. We're going to tell this town what happened to Lena Hart. The cold case is no longer a rumor. It's about to be a headline. The cameras arrive before the town is ready, humming and blinking and lining up in neat rows across the cracked pavement outside the sheriff's office. Satellite vans crowd the street, logos splashed across their sides like battle flags. Cables snaking along the ground to feed the story out into the world. Reporters adjust microphones, powder their faces, rehearse the same opening line with slightly different emphasis. They already know the headline. They've been writing it in their heads since the first alert hit their phones. Texas 2003 cold case solved, confession after 21 years shocks town. Inside the building feels like a chest held mid-breath. Phones ring non-stop, emails flood in. Old investigators call from distant cities, voices lined with disbelief and something dangerously close to relief. Parents of other missing children leave messages hoping, begging that this means their cases might be next. The front desk is buried under flowers. Letters, scribbled notes from strangers who never knew Lena but feel like they do now. Serena stands in the hallway, leaning against a wall that's seen too much, holding a thin folder that weighs more than any file should. Inside the lab's preliminary confirmation, the remains from the basement match Lena's DNA. It's official now. Not a theory. Not a possibility. A fact. An ugly, concrete fact that lives in ink and bone. For 21 years, the Hart family prayed for a miracle. What they get instead is certainty. The sheriff steps up beside her, tie-slightly crooked eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Press is ready," he says quietly. Serena glances at the folder. Are they ever? He huffs something that isn't quite a laugh. "Town needs to hear it from us, not from a scrolling banner," he says. "You sure you don't want to talk?" She shakes her head once. "I'll be there," she says. "But this part, this is yours." He nods understanding. Some people deliver the story. Some people dig it up. Both jobs leave scars. Outside the podium waits beneath a faded county seal. Microphones bristle across the top like a bouquet of steel stems. The sheriff steps up, clears. His throat looks out at the sea of faces, some local, some not. Behind the cameras mixed into the crowd stand the people who lived this story. Whether they wanted to or not, classmates, former co-workers, neighbors. The woman who once saw a truck idling outside a teenage girl's house and never forgot. Serena stands just inside the doorway, half-shadowed watching. Caleb watches too from a secure wing, eyes glued to the TV mounted high on the wall, hands twisted together as if he can hold himself in place if he squeezes hard enough. The sheriff begins. 21 years ago, he says, voice steady but thick. A young woman named Lena Hart left her shift at a local diner and never made it home. For 2 decades, her disappearance cast a shadow over this town. Today, we can say something we've waited far too long to say: Lena has been found. And the man responsible for her death is in custody. There's a ripple in the crowd. Gasps, sharp inhales, murmurs. Cameras zoom in. Pens scratch. Someone begins to cry without trying to hide it. He continues. Yesterday, skeletal remains were discovered beneath the basement floor of a residence on the outskirts of town belonging to Jonathan Paul Crowell. Forensic analysis has matched those remains to DNA provided by the Hart family. Further investigation, including a detailed confession, places Crowell at the center of this case. He has been charged with first-degree murder, unlawful concealment of a body, and multiple related offenses. The word confession races through the crowd like an electric current. Inside the interrogation room, hours before Serena replayed that confession again and again, his measured words, his warped logic, the way he turned blame into a shield and entitlement into a language. He never once said Lena's name with regret. Only ownership. Out at the podium, a reporter raises her hand. "Sheriff, is it true?" Crowell stalked Lena before her disappearance. The sheriff's jaw tightens. Evidence indicates a pattern of unwanted surveillance and contact. "Yes," he says carefully. "We believe he fixated on her for an extended period of time, and that she attempted to distance herself from him prior to her disappearance." "Was this a random crime?" another reporter asks. No, the sheriff answers simply, it was not. That sentence drops like a stone into the crowd. Because random is terrifying, but personal is worse. Random means it could have been anyone. Personal means it was built brick by brick in the quiet corners of the town they thought they knew. A third reporter cuts in. "Sheriff, what about the other man? The one who came forward? What's his role in this?" Inside, Caleb's breath catches. The sheriff chooses his words with surgical precision. "A witness has provided crucial information about the night of Lena's disappearance," he says. "This individual failed to report what he saw and did at the time, and we are reviewing his actions fully. But his decision to come forward after 21 years has allowed this case to move forward. Without that confession, we may never have found Lena. Caleb's eyes well a mix of gratitude and self-hatred swirling behind them. He doesn't feel like a witness. He feels like a coward who arrived 2 decades too late. But the truth is uglier and simpler than that. Sometimes the people who see the monster aren't heroes or villains. They're just human, and humans make terrible choices when they're drowning in fear. The sheriff continues fielding questions, deflecting speculation, repeating the same phrases that will be clipped, replayed, dissected for the news cycle. Cold case. Break in the investigation. Community healing. Justice for Lena. Words meant to wrap something monstrous in language small enough for people to hold in their hands. But some things don't fit in sound bites. After the conference, the town moves through the news like a storm, fast, loud everywhere. Phones light up. Group chats ignite. Old yearbooks are pulled from boxes. People squint at grainy photos of a younger Crowell at barbecues, at church events, at ribbon cuttings. He was always around, someone says. I never thought someone else answers. The same sentence repeats again and again in different houses, different voices. I never thought it was him. At a small, quiet apartment 3 towns over, Lena's mother sits with the TV remote in her hand, frozen mid-click. Her hair has gone fully gray. Lines crease her face where laughter once lived. She watches footage of the sheriff's office she left behind years ago, the place she couldn't bear to pass anymore. When they show a photo of the basement, she covers her mouth. When they say the words DNA confirmed, she closes her eyes. She used to write in her journal, "Hope is a door that keeps slamming shut." Today, another door closes, but this one doesn't slam, it clicks, a lock turning at last. She whispers, "I'm sorry," though she doesn't know who she's apologizing to, herself for leaving, or Lena for not being able to drag the truth out of the world sooner. Back at the station, Serena returns to the evidence board. The pins and strings and photos look different now. Some questions have been answered so loudly they'll echo for years. Others remain small and stubborn. She pulls Lena's photo down and holds it for a long moment. The girl in the picture doesn't know what's coming. Doesn't know a man is memorizing her schedule, rehearsing conversations in his head, building a fantasy where she owes him a life she never agreed to live. Serena doesn't talk to the photo. She doesn't promise peace or closure. Instead, she does something quieter. She thanks her for fighting on that highway, for running, for screaming, for trusting a stranger, even a flawed one, rather than surrendering to the monster she knew. Sometimes resistance is the only evidence left behind. Later, she visits Caleb. He looks smaller somehow, as if confession hollowed him out but left him standing. They showed him, Caleb says when she walks in. On TV. They said his name. Yes, Serena answers. And her, he asks, voice cracking. They said they found her. They did, Serena says. In his basement. He nods slowly, painfully. I thought she was at the quarry, he whispers. All these years I pictured her there, alone. I didn't know he'd... Serena raises a hand, stopping him before guilt spirals into something bottomless. You should have come forward in 2003, she says. No sugar, no denial. But you came now. And because of that, he won't die in that house. He'll die wearing a number. Caleb drops his gaze. Does that matter, he asks, after all this time? It matters to the living, Serena says. And it matters to her. Because control was the only thing he ever had. Now he doesn't even have that. Outside Route 14 hums as it always has. Trucks roll by. Headlights sweep the asphalt. The mile marker where Lena pulled over still stands, weathered and chipped. Someone has tied a small bouquet to it, the flowers already beginning to wilt in the heat. Beneath it, a handwritten note flutters in the breeze. We never forgot you. The town begins to change in small ways. Streetlights are fixed. Security cameras go up outside the diner that reopened under a new name. Schools invite advocates to talk about stalking, about obsession, about how attention can turn into a cage. Teenagers who grew up hearing the story as a warning now tell it as a lesson. Trust your fear. Don't ignore the truck that keeps appearing in your rearview mirror. Don't apologize for saying no. Crowell's trial will be months away. then weeks, then days. The courtroom will fill with people who knew him as the man who built their houses, fixed their roofs, smiled in Sunday pews. They'll listen to his confession played back in clean, cold audio. They'll stare at autopsy diagrams. They'll hear expert witnesses explain how long bones can stay hidden under concrete. They'll see photos of Lena alive and not. Jurors will go home at night and look at their own basements differently. In one future headline, the verdict will read guilty on all counts. In another, quieter headline that never gets printed, the town learns what it means to live with both justice and grief at the same time. One doesn't erase the other. On the day the sentence is handed down, Serena drives to the edge of town alone. She parks near the turnoff that leads to the old quarry, kills the engine, and sits in the thick silence of the Texas afternoon. The fields stretch out on either side unchanged. The sky is the same vast, indifferent blue it was in 2003. The wind moves through the grass, whispering over a landscape that has always known how to keep secrets. She steps out of the car and walks along the shoulder boots, crunching gravel. For a moment, she imagines the scene as it was described to her over and over. Lena's car idling, door open, a blue truck pulling in front. A black truck lurking behind a girl caught between two unknowns, heart pounding loud enough to drown out the hum of the highway. Serena closes her eyes and listens. There's no scream now, no footsteps, no headlights cutting through the dark. Just the low, steady rumble of distant engines and the faint rustle of the world continuing. Cold case, she murmurs the phrase, tasting different on her tongue now. Not frozen, not forgotten, just waiting for the right crack. Cases don't stay cold because the truth disappears. They stay cold because the right voice stays silent. This time the silence broke. As the sun sinks, the town lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere, a news anchor reads the final version of the story into a camera. Voice polished, precise. Texas 2003 cold case solved, confession after 21 years shocks town. Clips of the sheriff of patrol cars of blue and red lights washing over Crowell's house roll on screen. Comment sections fill. Hashtags trend. People far away shake their heads and say, "How awful," before moving on to the next story. But in Willow Creek, the story doesn't end when the cameras cut away. It lives in the empty seat at a family table, in the woman who still checks the curb before she falls asleep, just in case headlights appear with their beams turned off, in the deputy who slows down every time he passes mile marker 22, in the detective who files Lena's case under closed, but never truly lets it go, and in the quiet knowledge that for every cold case solved by a confession, there are others still waiting, pressed under concrete, hidden under excuses, trapped in the throats of people who haven't yet found the courage or the fear to speak. The town will heal, but not cleanly. Scars will form. New stories will rise. But Route 14 will never just be a road again. It will always be a reminder that monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they wave from their driveways, shake your hand at the hardware store, tip their servers, and remember their names. Sometimes it takes 21 years, one trembling confession, and a basement cut open like a wound to finally see them clearly. And when that happens, when the headline flashes, when the cold case warms into truth, when the arrest really does shock the town, what's left behind isn't just horror. It's a promise that someone will keep digging, that someone will keep listening, that someone somewhere will not let the story freeze again. Texas 2003 cold case solved, confession after 21 years shocks town. But the echo of that night on Route 14 will travel much further than the headline ever does.